So if you're looking for a way to make a 1-4-5 chord progression sound more interesting, one of the things you can do is something called chord substitutions. And all this is the idea that if you start with the skeleton of the tune, which is the 1, 4, and 5 chords themselves, if you know a few additional chord voicings, you can use those to connect up the chords that are already there. The trick is knowing which chord shapes to use and when to use them. So in this lesson, I want to show you 3 simple rules you can follow to start adding chords to a 1, 4, and 5 chord progression. And after this lesson is done, if you'd like to take a more in-depth look at this topic, I have a workshop coming up on Saturday, March 30th called Chord Substitutions, which you can learn more about at the link below or the link on screen. Okay, before we get into the 3 rules, we need a few chord voicings or chord shapes. So I'm going to do these in the key of A, and the first chord shape I've got here is an A major 6 chord with the root, the 6th, and the 3rd. And then I want to be able to play that in a couple other places up the neck. So I'm going to go up to an A with a C sharp in the bass. So here's the 3rd and the root and the 5th of an A over C sharp. And finally, here's an A7 chord with the 5th in the bass. So here's the 5th and the 3rd and the flat 7. So there's 3 ways to play an A chord. Now for the 4 chord, I could use this shape, which we just had at the 12th fret, and use it as a D7 with an A in the bass. So here's the 5th and 3rd and flat 7 of A. And I could go down from there to a D with an F sharp in the bass. Here's the 3rd and the root and the 5th of D. Or from here I could go up. I could go up to this D9 chord, which has the flat 7 in the bass, and then the 5th and the 9th of D. Or I could go up here and play D7 with the root and the flat 7 and the 3rd. And for all of these chord shapes, I'm only playing on the 6th string, the 4th string, and the 3rd string. And finally for E, I could have E7 right here with the 5th in the bass. Here's the 5th and 3rd and flat 7 of E. And from here, I could go down to an E with a G sharp in the bass. Here's the 3rd and the root and the 5th of E. I could, of course, have E in the open position with the root, flat 7, and 3rd. And once I've gone up this far, I could go to E9, the flat 7 in the bass, and the 5th and the 9th, or I could even keep going and end up here on an E7 with the root, flat 7, and 3rd. Okay, so the first rule is when we're on the 1 chord, we can connect up these different 1 chord shapes using either a 4 chord or a 5 chord. So if we're going from A6 to A over C sharp, we could connect it by using E7. So we'd have root, 6th and 3rd of A, 5th, 3rd, and flat 7 of E, and then 3rd, root, and 5th of the A again. So that's connecting 1 using the 5 chord to go between 2 different versions of the 1. So A, E7, and A again. Or we could use a 4 chord to go from here to this D6 chord. Here's the root, here's the 6th, here's the 3rd of D. And then here's A7 again with the 5th and the 3rd and the flat 7. So we've got all of that going 1, 5, 1, 4, 1, 4, 1, 5, 1. And you can do whatever you want with that rhythmically. And you can start from wherever, as long as you're on the 1 chord. Or you've got this way to keep moving as long as you're always starting and ending on the 1 chord. Now the second rule involves the 4 chord, which we're in the key of A, so right now our 4 chord is D. And we've got these different places to play D. And so the rule here is that if we want to connect up different versions of the 4 chord, we can use the 4 of 4, meaning whatever the 4 chord is, in this case D, we can use the chord that is 4 notes up from that, or the 4 of the 4 chord. In this case, if we're in D, D, E, F sharp, G, G is the 4 chord in the key of D, so we can connect up these D chords using different versions of a G chord. So here's G6 with the root and the bass, root 6 and 3. And here's G with B in the bass. Here's the 3rd and the root and the 5th of G. Even just using those 2 chords, we can now go from D, the 3rd, root, and 5th of D, to G6, and then to D7 with the 5th and the 3rd and the flat 7. And then here's G again with the 3rd and the bass. And then here's that D9 chord with the flat 7 in the bass and the root and the 5th. So on the 4 chord, and again, as long as we start and end on the 4 chord, we can do what we want rhythmically. And it gives us this way to move around whenever we're on 4. And the third rule is that whenever we're on the 5 chord, which in the key of A would be E7, and we've got these different E7 chords we're working with, we can connect up those different 5 chords using either the 4 or the 1 chord in between. So if we're here, we can go from E with the root and the flat 7 and the 3rd to D over F sharp. Here's the 3rd and root and 5th of D. Here's the 3rd and root and 5th of E again. Here's a 1 chord. Here's root 6th and 3rd of A, or A6. And then here's E7 with the 5th in the bass and the 3rd in the flat 7. So 5, 4, 5, 1, 5. So we've got those that we can move around. Did I play that right? That's what I want. So 5, 4, 5, 1, 5. And we can turn them around. Or start in the middle. And so that's how we can get around when we're on the E chord or the 5 chord. So now, with just these 3 rules in place, we have a way to play all over the neck, even if we're just playing on 1, 4, and 5. So for instance, right now in my membership, the Fingerstyle 5, we're finishing up a bunch of work on the song How Long Blues, which is an 8-bar blues that we're playing in the key of A. So the first 2 bars are just the 1 chord, A. And then it's 2 bars on the 4 chord, D7. And then it's a bar of the 1 chord, a bar of the 5 chord, and then some kind of turnaround, which could be more or less elaborate, depending on what you want to do. But if we just look at the first few bars, here we are on A for 2 bars, so we could go up here and come back down. Here's the D chord, back to the 1 chord, 5 chord, and then maybe something a little trickier at the end. But that's the idea. Now, the thing is, I learned about chord substitutions in a very specific way, watching people do, oh, well, on this song, I do this, and I put in this chord over here. And that was really great, but I always was like, God, is there something sort of systematic we can do here? Like, can we have a particular way to do this so that it makes more sense and I can apply it to other songs without having to go back and like reinvent the wheel every time? That's kind of what these rules are the beginnings of. And as I mentioned earlier, if you'd like to go into much more detail on this subject, I have a workshop coming up on Saturday, March 30th. It's a 2-hour live stream workshop all about playing chord substitutions. So starting with this bedrock of how do you get around chord by chord, how can you start to connect those chords up, and getting into more detail and applying it to more specific songs so that by the end of the workshop, you have a literal chord vocabulary of moves you can use to connect chords together and take any 1-4-5 tune and start to build it out the way that I've just done here. So if that's something you'd like to learn more about, go to the link below or the link on screen to check it out. In the meantime, if you've got a question about chord substitutions, I'd love to hear from you. Please leave it down below. And as always, thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time.